Hello, and welcome to another 9-minute Bible study. Our starting point, 2 Chronicles 28, and we're going to pick up with verse 16. 2 Chronicles 28, verse 16. Let's set the stage here. In our last lesson, we saw King Ahaz become the king. He inherited a strong nation, but immediately he rejected the Lord his God and accepted the gods of the nations around Israel. The king, he rejected the morality of the Lord his God and replaced it with the morality of the nations around them. What followed? What we saw was that when the morality and the worship of the Lord were rejected, we saw the nation militarily destroyed, politically destroyed, and economically destroyed. Why? Because the spiritual foundation was destroyed, and because the moral foundation of the country was destroyed. Verse 16. At that time did King Ahaz send to the kings of Assyria to help him. Now we're seeing the country become diplomatically bankrupt. Why? Because Judah can no longer protect itself. Its military is gone. They have to go and beg the Assyrians to protect them from their enemies. This is a disaster. What was once a strong, proud nation has to grovel to the Assyrians and say, "Oh, please help us. We were once strong, but now we need your mighty help." The nation now diplomatically bankrupt. Also, one other thing, because so many people had been taken out of the land, the social structure of the country began to collapse. When the Lord was rejected, 1. The nation became militarily bankrupt. 2. The nation became economically bankrupt. 3. They became politically bankrupt. 4. They became socially bankrupt. And now diplomatically bankrupt. All because what? They rejected the Lord and his morality. Verse 17. For again the Edomites had come and smitten Judah. They defeated him in battle. Why? Well, Judah doesn't have much of a military left. They've been defeated over and over again. Now the Edomites can waltz in and start taking loot and captives. The next verse. The Philistines also had invaded the cities of the low country and of the south of Judah, and have taken Beth Shemesh and a long list of cities that follow, and then they moved into the cities. Talk about social disorder. When one group of people take over from another group of people, social chaos. We are seeing all of this. Why? Because the king rejected the Lord and his morality. Verse 19. For the Lord brought Judah low because of Ahaz, king of Israel, for he made Judah naked. How did he do this? By taking away the spiritual covering that covered the nation. You see, when one worships the Lord, there is a spiritual covering in the nation. But when the worship of the Lord is rejected, that spiritual covering is gone. And now the nation, like Judah, they are humiliated and embarrassed. Why? No more spiritual covering. Verse 20. And Tiglath-Pileser, king of Assyria, came to him and distressed him, but strengthened him not. The king of Assyria came, and what happened? Ahaz became stressed out. The Assyrians would not help him. Verse 21. For Ahaz took away a portion of the house of the Lord. He raided the temple. At a time he should have been coming back to the Lord, he robbed God, and out of the house of the king and of the princes, and gave it to the Assyrians, but he helped him not. All of this blackmail money, and there was no diplomatic help coming from the Assyrians or military help. Verse 22, and in the time of his distress did he trespass or sin yet more and more against the Lord. He gets worse. In verse 23, he begins to worship the god of Syria. Why? Well, the Syrian gods defeated us, therefore they must be superior, forgetting the fact that his trouble began when he rejected the Lord his God.
Amen.
Verse 24, and Ahaz gathered together all the vessels of the house of God and cut them in pieces, the vessels of the house of God. He desecrated the furniture in the temple. Now it's getting worse. And shut up the doors of the house of the Lord. For the first time since Solomon opened the doors of the temple is closed. There is no more sacrifices. There is no more morning and night incense. The table of showbread, empty. The light in the candlestick, out. Why? The king hated God so much that he tried to ban the worship of the Lord. What was the end result of all of this? 1. The nation became militarily bankrupt. 2. They became politically bankrupt. 3. They became economically bankrupt. 4. They became socially bankrupt. And 5. They became diplomatically bankrupt. Why was this the case? Because they rejected the Lord their God. They were spiritually bankrupt. And they rejected the morality of the Lord. They were morally bankrupt. 7 bankrupts. And what does that mean? Completely bankrupt nation. Now, the king did one good thing. Verse 27. He died. The best thing Ahaz did for his kingdom, honestly, was die. But the kingdom that he left was barely hanging on as a nation. Why? Because he rejected the Lord his God. For any nation, especially one with a history of worshiping the Lord, of following biblical morality, the worst thing they can do is reject the Lord their God and their morality. The end result is going to be catastrophic, and it will bring a nation, just like Judah, to the edge of ruin. In order for a nation to be strong, it must be spiritually and morally strong. If not, the nation becomes bankrupt. And we'll pick up with this in our next lesson.